and bring on Jim Spellos, our next speaker. And then after that, Jim, we'll open up the floor, okay? Jim.
There's so much good stuff about risk management, Diane, but I'll tell you, it's a true story. Yesterday, I got an email about a group wanting me to come speak in August. Talk about now a risk management dilemma. And I so love what Courtney and Ed, and also going back to what Wayne and John were all talking about regarding risk management and liability. But I got to talk to everyone that we have this big picture in mind about risk management. But I want to focus micro for the next 10 minutes. I want to focus on all the risk management that we're not doing for our own personal safety and security online. So we've got 10 minutes, maybe we'll take a couple extra. We're going to do some tips and tricks and some ideas, and how we're going to start this conversation really becomes very simple. Is this a legit website? Take a look at it. 2020 coronavirus stimulus check, home, about, services, blog, looks good. The pandemic, 1200 check. There are cookie policies in there. Guess what, gang? This isn't legit. This is fake. How do you know? Well, sometimes you don't. We are so tasked to click on things, to have that response mechanism right away, that we see something that we know is going to positively impact us. And all of a sudden we're going to click there. And before you know it, we're putting in our email address. Maybe we're even putting in a password. And guess what? We're caught. We're trapped. Well, I want you thinking extensively about Ed and Courtney's conversation and the risk management on the macro level. I want to talk about it on the personal level right now. Not even at the event necessarily, but everything you're doing online to make sure you're not a statistic either. You gotta have all your defenses up. So a couple of the standard things that we will either talk about now or just brief over. I mean, the conversation about phishing scams is as old as the internet is. Yet at the same time, we're seeing new variants coming out, even to the point of hopping on the COVID-19 fear that is out there. So we have to be very aware. We're going to take a look and have you sort of figure out whether some of the things you're going to see are legit or aren't legit. As we get back to live meetings, we want to make sure you're aware of what's known as a man-in-the-middle attack. And that is when somebody actually co-opts the internet that you're trying to pull your information onto and from, and they're sitting in between you and, let's say, the coffee shop server, which means everything you're typing in is being seen by their computer unless you're protecting yourself properly. And oh, by the way, I mentioned coffee shop. I could also mention the person in the sleeping room next to you at the hotel, because that is not an uncommon thing to have happen. So the more we start traveling and getting back to whatever the new abnormal is going to be, these man-in-the-middle attacks are going to be very important for you to be aware of. So are the fileless attacks. Those are attacks when you're using things like the USB ports in airports, in planes, in public spaces to charge your devices. Do you know how easy it is for a bad actor to put something in one of those USB ports, which means the minute you attach your phone or your computer to it, bingo, you're already in big trouble. Also, a lot of times, and you've heard of for years and years, don't download files with macros in them. Macros are a nice little way for attacks, viruses to get onto your computer. And then especially with phishing, we have the large topic of ransomware. So what we want to do right now is I want to play a little game. I want to show you a couple of legitimate, well, I won't call them phishing scams because some are and some aren't, but emails that have been received, and I want you to determine whether it's a real deal or if it's a phishing scam. So the first one is going to be something that's going to come from Netflix, and it says your account has been suspended. And then the address is Dear Netflix. Boy, doesn't that make you think right away something's wrong with this picture? And we're sending you this email to let you know that your credit card has been expired. To update your account information, please visit your account with a link. Do you click on that? Really? You even have to think twice that you click on that? Clearly not the case of what we need to be talking about. That is as much of a phishing scam, an old school scam as we've seen. And I think all of our defenses are up enough to be able to see this. The next one, however, and actually the next two, are ones that I've received in the past couple of weeks. This came from one of my doctors. And this is exactly the email that was sent. It was from the organization. It had their logo. It had exciting news as the title. And then it had a document in the bottom. Do I open it? Do I not open it? Well, guess what, gang? I know the person who this came from, so I texted them. I didn't open it. I'm not going to do that. And guess what? That was legit. That's how they sent the email. I got to tell you, in 2020, well, shoot, even if we were talking about this in 2013, but certainly in 2020, the fact of the matter is that if we don't have our eyes and ears open constantly with all the different communications we're getting and understand that we could be at the expense of a bad actor, a hacker, a malevolent player to be able to access our information just by putting a bad piece of software on our computer because we were silly enough to click on that link. Okay, so that's number two. The next one came to me a few weeks ago, and this is the exact note I got. It says, attention, urgent message from New York State Department of Labor. And I'll read it to you. It's from no reply at labor.newyork.gov. Nothing really suspicious there. You see those no replies a lot in emails. And it says, attention, you have an urgent message from New York State Department of Labor. Please sign in. And notice that the sign-in link is a little bit longer than the words itself, using your ny.gov ID to access the message. Well, I shared this with my wife, and I said, you want to see a scam? And I showed it to her. She goes, you should click on that. That's legit. I go, no, can't be. That can't be legit. All my spidey senses were up saying that's no way that's right. So I did some more digging, okay? So I was able to right click on those links like that one and find out, well, where does that take me to? Well, the link there took me to, and look at the real subtlety here. The link took me to applications.labor.newyork.gov/individual-reg, where the actual website didn't have that last reg on there. Now, one thing I want to point your attention to right here is where you see the end of the dots, newyork.gov, that last line, the last letters before the final gov. That's where, if the email is going to be flawed or spoofed, you're going to see a distinctive change there. And there's no change. So I checked further on the New York Gov, and the link there, the difference was actually kind of weird, because on one hand, the difference was mentioning the lack of an HTTPS, and one had a www. All really, really strange in terms of this being an issue here. So I looked, and I looked some more, and guess what? That was legitimate. Boy, if I ever had the opportunity to talk to right now the state of New York about how to send emails, or probably any state, I would give them a piece of my mind, because I wasn't going to click on that. And you know what? If you don't, I'm kind of proud of you. We've seen a lot of scams that have happened in the past 2 months. Some stats, for those of you who don't want to just see what the actual emails look like, but some of the stats we're seeing right now, over 145,000 suspicious domains have been identified just in the first quarter alone, and over 130% increase in sites promising small business loans. You don't think that's preying on our needs to become more financially solvent? And over 60,000 fake banking sites created. This is just in the first couple of months. They're preying on our need to get information, on our desire to get it quickly, and to get information that's going to support us. We have to stay strong with the risk management. You may or may not have seen this one, that business continuity plan announcement starting May 2020. Microsoft has indicated to everyone, this is called the LokiBot malware, and malware stands for malicious software. And they're using this to get you to click on it, and then all of a sudden to drop something on your computer. So what might that look like? What might actually go into your computer? Well, what this particular malware does is, first of all, it's going to steal your credentials, because it's going to ask you to log in, username, password, bam. And if you're using the same password over and over again, well, we'll get to that in a few minutes, but you're massively in trouble. But on top of that, it's putting what's known as a keystroke logger. That does exactly what it says it does. As you're typing stuff, every single key that you are typing in, it registers and sends back to them. What does that mean? Well, shoot, that means that when you type in username, password, financial information, that's going right to the people that you don't want to have that. And if you're in the government or healthcare side, what about this one? And I sort of laughed almost when I saw this, the government targeting with free fast food coronavirus phishing scandal. Do they have no morals nor some good sense about types of things we should be eating? Jeez, gang. And then the CARES Act stimulus. We haven't even finished this yet. And this came from technically American Express, but baloney. It wasn't from American Express. Hello, valued member. That's a red flag thing right there. When you don't see your name in there or you see something misspelled, your senses should be just going haywire. But the thing really to note is that little blue link that says tap here to proceed. Really, when you tap there, you see it's a huge Google document. If you don't know the person that is sending it to you and you can't be 100% sure, like I did with my doctor, you are far better to connect with them directly rather than trying to click on that. Because you click on that link and enter anything, let the enterer beware, I guess is what to say. And with all this happening, we haven't even focused on ransomware that much, but it's still out there in a massive way. And what it is, a phishing scam that anybody in the organization who accidentally clicks on a link, it doesn't even have to enter username or password, just clicks on a link, and it could put a lockdown, encryption on the entire organization. Lock you out from all your files until you pay ransom, hence the name. How much? Sometimes they don't ask for much. Sometimes they ask for a little more. I guarantee you, if you talk to Ed and Courtney, they would tell you that the constant approach is never to pay the ransom. But if an organization is out there not paying the ransom and not having any of their files accessible, that's a tough call on an individual basis. One other footnote here, that hotel on the left, a high-end 4-star Austrian resort, had a ransomware that didn't affect their files. It affected every room key in the hotel. You see, all the rooms are connected to a computer, and using the Internet of Things, they were able to lock everybody out of their room. Guess what? They not only paid the ransom, but then they went public and made sure everyone knew what happened, because this is happening in our industry. And if we had more time, and I know Dianne, I don't, cryptocurrency mining, the fact that we have huge amounts of people wanting your computer power to be able to make and receive and win Bitcoins. And I ain't going into that whole process right now. But sometimes the hack can be as simple as sort of tapping your computer power so they can answer these mathematical questions that can earn them Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency monies. Yikes.
That's incredible. So so they do it like a game then, Jim?
Well, what actually happens is that they are asked to solve a mathematical problem. That's how the Bitcoins are put on the market. And I think it's every 2 weeks. And they said this is an enormous mathematical problem. And the person who can solve it first gets a Bitcoin. This happens on a regular basis. So
are you talking like to regular people or to those in that space?
You and me, anybody who wants to be there, we can be part of this. But we darn well better have a seriously strong computer to be able to process it faster than somebody else. So I have a weak computer, but I'm a slimy hacker. So what am I going to do? I'm going to send a piece of malware to you and maybe your closest 500 friends. And if they all click on it, what I've put on the computer, and by the way, Dianne, I don't do this just so we're clear, it's the group I am talking about here. But what would happen is that I would be able to now tap into everyone's processing power. There's only 2 ways you're going to notice that. One is that your computer's starting to slow down really extensively, and there's no reason for that to happen. You don't have a lot of things open. The second reason that it will happen, the second thing you'll notice, is that your electricity bill is going to go up because your computer processing is going to be going on nonstop. Pretty amazing stuff. And it's actually a world I don't even want to walk down. But you got to be aware that it's there.
Well, yeah, but Jim, wait, I have to ask you this too. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to bring Wayne into this. If Wayne, are you still with us here?
I'm here.
Yeah, so Wayne, does this go on an insurance policy? Like, do you now have to protect your I don't know, Jim, do you have to protect your group now from malware, from what, is there insurance on that yet?
There is. Absolutely. It's called cyber insurance.
Yep.
And it's becoming more common than we realize. But again, there are certain coverages for each insurance company that carries that. And again, the truth is in the fine print. There's certain limits to cyber insurance because it's so new. Obviously, can you imagine a huge company, especially a company that, say, like a software or a tech company? I mean, they could lose billions of dollars. So an insurance company would not take on that risk by themselves. It could be many insurance companies or reinsurance, for that matter, that would actually cover only a portion of the risk. So again, depending upon the coverage, depending on the line of business, it would kind of determine exactly where and how much would be covered.
How much you're covered. And then I don't know if Jonathan is still with us, but then where is that in our contracts? You know,
Well, I'm here, Diane, and basically, when you're dealing with cyber insurance, that's a different deal overall, as Wayne has indicated. And from your contract standpoint, you're not worried so much about the contracts that you have as you are with the insurance coverage that you have. You might say, and you might want to shift some liability to the other side, that they will indemnify you should personal information be given to the other side or to the vendor, that they will take on any risk of the violation or infringement of that information. It's a whole different world out there, but you know, we carry, as a law firm, we carry that for darn sure, and we encourage our clients for sure to carry it as well.
Hey, John and or Wayne, what % of the people in our industry do you think are carrying that? Would you say it's under 5%, under 1%? What do you think?
I would hope everybody is, Jim, but realistically, so many of them don't carry, and this is a real problem with a small, medium professional, third-party, independent. They don't even carry good, comprehensive general liability.
Absolutely.
So you feel the same way? It's pretty minimal and pretty sad.
Pretty minimal, and could be expensive. I mean, that would also preclude a lot of the smaller businesses to even consider it at that point. It's almost like a rider for that real expensive engagement ring. You might have your homeowner policy, but you may not have a policy specific to that because you say, well, I have a safe in the house. Or you have internal, that could be the same thing as the internal mechanisms and safeguards and firewalls in your company, that you might feel like you may have a reliance on that, as opposed to really delving into a much more a very expensive add-on.
so I think this is interesting because it sort of ties a lot together here. Thinking about this. So if I'm an independent planner or a planner, this is one more thing to bring to my customers' attention about the threat and risk that's associated with it. And if I, as a small business or an independent business, don't have that insurance, do I then put something in my contract that says I'm not responsible if anything happens?
No, what you do, Diane, is you make yourself named as a co-insured with their policy,
Right.
and also include yourself as being indemnified by them for any misuse. If I have a computer vendor or I have a software vendor or anybody else, I want them to be responsible for what their software includes as to protecting me from any kind of malware, ransomware, anything else that might be there that can be infected through their system. Now, that's a hard task of really delineating.
I want to bring this conversation back into the reality is that with all this great stuff on insurance that we're talking about, it isn't the organization who makes the mistake. It's the individual person.
You're
it's
right,
the person who gets an email and clicks on a link. And as a matter of fact, the next thing that I was going to talk about, which really plays into this conversation, is the biggest threat that we have to really think about is called social engineering. It's how Target was hacked. How were they hacked? How did that massive hack happen a couple of years ago? Well, it was two guys who come at the end of the week into their offices dressed as heating, ventilation, and air conditioning maintenance. About 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. They said they're there for their quarterly inspection. Front desk let them in. 15 minutes later, the hack was done. So if everyone out there wants to just do a quick Google at some point on social engineering. Go to YouTube, actually. There are some amazing videos on how easy it is for people to give up their own information. So it really is that there's this beautiful lineage and this beautiful combination of the macro, of the insurance, of the legal, of the risk management, and the micro of the individual person who needs to be aware of all this, because we just can't assume that if our organization is good at insurance that we're fine. Because, for example, when Vegas got hit, when Baltimore got hit and the CVBs there, you know, it really took an awful lot of work on their part to be able to get back into business as normal, which obviously we know, John, isn't happening anytime soon in general.
Jim,
Yeah.
let me give you an anecdote. When I was in college, I was a fraternity member. Our fraternity, the symbol was an owl. We had I was at Northwestern. We had a chapter at the University of Chicago. They had at the top of their fraternity house owls on masonry, top of the house. This was before I got there, but some enterprising brothers before I was there went downtown. They rented a truck. They had scaffolding. They set up the scaffolding. This is like in broad daylight. They set up scaffolding. They went up to the top of the fraternity house. They chipped off the owls, brought them down, put them in the back of the truck, and then brought them back to our house at Northwestern, and they adorned either side of the fireplace. Broad daylight, broad daylight. They set up, you know, people all went by, thought it was business as usual. That's what we're dealing with. Everybody is thinking this is business as usual. And if you don't question it, you're going to be a victim.
No question about that.
I have a couple of questions that came in. Speaking of that, I have negotiated a date change. Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. I just left here. Can an attendee sue a major brand like a Marriott or Hilton when they've stayed at one of their properties if the brand was hacked and the attendee suffered financial losses?
John, that's you.
Well, Marriott was hacked big time. I think it was 120 million people. Their data, including passport, other information, were hacked. Marriott immediately went on the defensive, sent out credit watches, et cetera, et cetera. You had one of the major credit watch services get hacked for all of their people who had even more sensitive data. Sure, I mean, there is a responsibility on the part of the property. If they're hacked, by law, they have certain responsibilities that they have to notify people in the event of a hack and their personal identification information is disclosed, what responsibilities they have. Let's go back a couple of years now to the European Union and the general data protection regs that were issued there, and the fines can be substantial in the billions of euros, quite candidly. So yeah, there's a lot of liability out there and people need to protect themselves. But I think I'll go back to Jim's thing. On you and I and everybody else watching this, we have our own little personal responsibility of let's monitor it, let's exercise our own due care, and you know, if you don't think it looks legit, it probably isn't. And so why even take the chance? If they really want to get hold of you, come back, they can pick up the phone and call you.
Right. I think this is a good reminder, Jim.
And part of the problem is that right now with all the deep fakes that are happening, even if it looks legit, it very well might not be. And that's something that we have to, as a generation, have to wrap our brains around. That nothing you believe, that you see, you really have to believe, you can believe at face value anymore. And I think that's probably the biggest message that, from my perspective, again, on the micro level here, on the individual level, that we want to get everyone to understand, which is sort of take a step back when you get a piece of information, excuse me, when you see a site, when you go somewhere, and think about whether is that legit, is that something that's going to take away my privacy or my security.
Well, and Jim, I'll go back a little bit more here. And you know, my day, when I called technical support, it was basically replace the light bulb in the overhead projector. And I think what we have to do these days is be right on top of it. If it doesn't look right, or even if it does seemingly look right, if it's unordinary as to the kind of email you normally be getting, call TI.
Yep. And a good IT department right now is putting together these processes where they're sending out what looks to be legitimate emails that look to be legitimate fakes in the effort of trying to get to see who on the staff is clicking through there. And when they click, they'll get a pop-up message. You really shouldn't have clicked on this, and it's from IT. What they've identified is the biggest problem in most organizations is C-suite, is that they're the ones who are doing the most damage there in terms of clicking through, possibly because of time, possibly because they're just not aware of all the risks that are involved. So this is a massive, massive issue that's out there that we got to be able to get one person at a time understanding how to protect themselves. By the way,
Jim, I have to, just for the sake of time, thank you both, because this is a good continuation for one of our future. This conversation will never end.
No,
because we constantly, but we want to remember from this is don't believe everything you read.
Hey,
all right,
Diane,
Jim, you want to take it home?
Yeah, let me take it home. I want to give you 5 tips. I want to just, people have 5 things they need to be able to realize. We're going to go through these really quickly. What you have to have in your computer. Number 1, and possibly the least important, an antivirus system. It's probably there already. You might not like the one you have, but make sure that it's running in the background at all times. Even more important, number 2, an anti-malware solution. Sometimes the antivirus companies offer this and an additional fee. I use a separate one. I'll never recommend any. What I use is Malwarebytes. I think it's great. The good thing about anti-malware, you can have more than one on your device. You can also have them on your mobile devices. And this is going to protect you if you do click that thing that's putting something on your computer, that it will block it and quarantine it so it never gets to your operating system. That's number 2. Number 3, especially as we're back on the road, a VPN, a virtual private network, whether it's company sponsored, whether it's your own that you're using, this is going to encrypt all of your communication. So if you do have that bad actor hitting the man in the middle attack, that you're not going to have a situation where your data is exposed unnecessarily. Truly a critical thing in our industry, and one huge slap at a couple of facilities around the country who disable individual VPNs because they think it's not secure for their purposes. I would actually say that that's a massive legal and insurance issue that is waiting to happen when someone gets slammed with any sort of virus or malware at their facility, because you wouldn't let me put a VPN on my service and work with your internet. Number 4, and I can go for 2 hours on this password manager, critical. Number 5, 2-factor authentication. All those boring 5-6 digit codes you get when you have to log on, and now you have to pull your phone out and get the text message. Get over it. Just do it, because in case someone does hack your password, if they haven't gotten your mobile device where the text is coming, you still may be in the clear. So 5 layers: antivirus, anti-malware, VPN, password manager, 2-factor authentication. Stay safe. No, that's not my social security number. Back to you, Diane.
Jim, thank you. And again, more to come from Jim Spellos in the next few weeks, because Jim, questions come in like when a spam call comes in on your cell, that it's not from your own area code now. The old trick they're doing now. Do they have your info now? Is there a yes or a no to that?
That one's a maybe, actually, just because you get a spam call. If their own area code, you answer, they don't give you information, but whatever you give them will be used against you.
And what about what's the short answer to put on your iPhone to protect? Is there anything to put on your iPhone to protect this stuff?
You get a big jar of common sense and just put it right next to the iPhone every night, so maybe it seeps in while you're charging it. No, there's nothing, and especially with iPhones, they don't even let you add any additional security on there, because they A, do a slightly better job, but B, they want to make sure they control what gets in and what doesn't get in. So yeah, common sense.
So don't try peanut butter.
Well, if it stops you from clicking on the link, absolutely try.
Right. Well, anyway, thank you so much. Lot to take in, everybody, and